Hello and welcome, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Sarah, and I'm the Director of Marketing here at BrainSell. And today we'll be exploring how to determine the value of different CRM platforms. So while cost is one area, there are also a number of other factors for consideration and prioritization to help you make the right choice for your company. But before we dive in, let's take care of some housekeeping. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, you don't have to wait until the end. We will have a formal Q&A at the end. But if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please put them in the question box in your control panel, and I'll interject and bring them up during the discussion. And then additionally, we are recording this webinar, and we will be sharing it with you via an email. You'll likely see it in your inbox tomorrow morning. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues, Sonia and Kevin, to introduce themselves and kick things off.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Hi, everyone. My name is Sonia Friedel, and I'm president at BrainSell. I've been at the company for 9 years and love working on projects of all kinds, helping people improve their business process and software situation.
I got to introduce myself. Oh, okay.
Kevin.
Kevin Cook, BrainSell Technologies. Been here just a little bit longer, not much, about 10 years, and I'm techie. As any of you guys out there know, I like to focus on techie stuff. But it's always great to work with Sonia on Sugar, Salesforce, CRM things and not get too technical.
Great. Kev, what are we doing today?
We're going to have a great discussion today, Sonia, about the value of two really big players in the CRM space. You got Salesforce and Sugar, and people are always asking us, and I know you get this question too, which is better, which is better value? So to tackle that question, we're going to look at the state of CRM in general. We're going to give you some coaching, some ideas of things you should look at to determine value. Then we'll talk about Salesforce and Sugar specifically. At the very end, we're going to do some Q&A. We'll be able to answer your questions about these products and about establishing value. How's that sound?
Sounds like a plan. Sounds like a plan. So a little bit about us, nothing too much here, about 25 years in business. We really look at process and needs first while we're talking to clients about how they can improve their business software situation. It's all about people and process, and then technology. We'll get into that more. We help companies thrive by solving their business challenges with guidance and technology. That is our noble purpose, and we're here to do it, and we mean it. So again, we don't just look at software. We are not waiters of business software. We are business consultants to help you through a really huge decision. And we have several different arenas that we focus on, the main ones being ERP and accounting software, CRM, and BI solutions. Also marketing automation software is one of my favorites. So the Marketos, HubSpots, Sales Fusion, Acton, we work with all of those and understand them well and can help people get them working better and faster. So Sarah, I think we have some questions to start off with.
Thanks, guys. And before we dive in, I thought it would be a good opportunity to get a better understanding of who is out there in the audience today in order to better tailor the discussion. So if you wouldn't mind, folks on the line, sharing if you're currently using CRM in your organization, and if so, which CRM you're using. So it looks like we have a 68% vote, 86. It looks like 37% of the audience is not using CRM currently. And then we're split between Salesforce and Sugar. It's pretty close. It's about 25% for each.
I expect that,
yeah. So and then one more question. Let's see. So are you planning to implement a new CRM platform this year? Let us know. And the options are yes, we're exploring options. No, we're happy with what we have. No, we're not quite ready for CRM, and it's a possibility. And it looks like we have 38% say it's a possibility, and 44% are exploring options. So that's great, guys.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Well, that makes sense for our content today.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can help help people get through the barrage of online resources, because I know there are a lot out there. So we're going to start off with just kind of the state of the market. It is pretty healthy, pretty darn healthy. It is the biggest and fastest growing software market in the world, actually. It's CRM being $82 billion share by 2025. Grand View Research states that. And it's really at the heart of every growing business who's organized and cares about sales and taking care of their customers. We know that from lots of experience. If you're not already using a CRM, you should be considering it. The odds that your competitors have it are huge. Also, recruiting young employees is made more difficult if you don't have state-of-the-art tools. That's a huge consideration just for keeping your lifeblood, of your company strong and pulsing. There's so many options out there. You got the G2 crowds, Capgemini. You've got so many different research and rating sites out there that it can get really dizzying. So that's what we're here to help you narrow it down. It can be really hard to determine which one's right for your needs, right? You can look down like some of those rating sites and you'll see, oh, they do this. Well, what about this feature? What about this feature? Very, very feature rich. We're going to try to get outside of just the features today and talk a little more big picture and really practical stuff for you. And going with the most popular option isn't always the right thing to do. It really is going to depend on your people and your processes, and we're going to get into that so much more. So think about this a little bit as we set the stage here. There are more than 380 CRM companies listed on G2 Crowd. That's a popular rating site we talk about all the time. Only 19% of those have a rating of above 3 stars. Crazy. So there are a lot of tools out there.
I was shocked when you shared that statistic with me, Sonia. That was amazing.
It's crazy. I mean, and you hear like at cocktail parties, how annoyed some people can be with CRM.
Right.
And it hurts me to hear that, to hear my friends complaining about logging in and updating their opportunities once every 2 weeks or months. Like, oh, what a waste! What a waste! Could be so much better. So we're going to get into that.
But then you hear those stories and you realize why this statistic is accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
so,
yeah.
Well,
again, people too, right? We'll get into that a lot more. One of my good friends said, I only log into Salesforce once every month because that's what my manager tells me to do.
Wow.
Like, oh God, what a waste! I hope the purchasing agent who's paying for that bill knows. They don't. So the benefits of CRM, and this is what I talk about at cocktail parties. The benefits of CRM. Well, there can be a huge ROI. There are facts around this, and we're going to send you the slide deck with some comments that have some of these factoids in there. So huge ROI. I mean, this is fact. It's amazing. There's a group called Nucleus Research. We cite their work all the time. They're fantastic. They say that for every $1 spent on CRM implementations, it can return as much as $8.71 in sales revenue on the dollar. So you should be getting an 8x return on your investment. You should be, if done right. It reduces, or more. It depends on what processes you're replacing or putting in place with CRM. I mean, and we go through this with some clients too. You think you could save 2 deals maybe by having an organized method of keeping up with your salespeople's ops? How much is your average deal? 100 grand? 200 grand right there. That you could maybe save. So there's so many ways of coming up with the ROI and the, those specifics. And we help clients all the time come up with that, by the way. Lower churn. So it can reduce your CRM, your customer churn rather, by as much as 27%. It's our customer success manager's right hand. They wouldn't be able to do their job and their volume without CRM. So again, it can reduce that churn. And it's, as everyone knows, so much less expensive to keep a customer and to sell them other things than to land a brand new logo. About 5 times harder, I think, right, Kevin?
Yeah, that's right.
Improve productivity and scale. Like, I just can't imagine when people tell me, and we talk, of course, to people every day who are still using paper, Excel, or just a barrage of tools and really savvy and intelligent workarounds like tasks and Outlook and all sorts of weird things. It just shocks me. Like, you could do so much more if you just had a centralized database. So of course, improve productivity, smarter selling, you know, Cloud Wave says that you can increase sales conversions by up to 300%. And you might have a 0% knowledge of what's converting right now. So just even getting metrics is huge. You know, a better customer experience, when our customers call in, it connects to our phone system and it pops out their CRM record on the screen. Just that extra touch, right? Knowing, like, there's nothing more annoying when I call in somewhere and I'm like, you just asked for my phone number and you're passing me along and you already know who I am. Those are what people are expecting, that even in their work experiences, not just in their experiences at home with products. So just having that enhanced customer experience. Oh, I know, I've got the case right here. Let's walk through that, right?
Yeah.
Taking support, just knowing what their phone number is and where they are, what time zone. I mean, come on, guys. Some really easy things here. And
to comment on that, when you're picking up the phone, you see that little pop-up, you say, oh, you were just talking to Rod last week. Can I connect you over there? Ron can take up your problem. And so they know exactly that you know what's going on in their business.
Well, and in speaking with clients, Kev, I don't know how much you hear this, but I hear this all the time. We're just looking for a centralized database where if we have a virtual, even not a virtual team, but if they're virtual team members, this is even huger of an impact. Huger, that's my new word. If you've got people all across the country, if they can go into one database and see who spoke with whom and what email was sent to where, you're just already 10 steps ahead. So that's the most basic thing that CRM does, and you can have that pretty easily. And that goes along with that accessibility to data and that single source of truth. Also, it's going to help your marketers, right? If it's in there and the contacts are in there, you're going to have just so much better marketing. So, and shortening the sales cycle, of course, by at least 10 points. I mean, also if your managers can see in a meeting that this opportunity has been open for 2.5 years and barely anything's happened, let's not bank on that. So great, some really, really obvious benefits of CRM.
You're right. Big benefits. They're obvious, but people sometimes need to be reminded of them, right? Right.
Yep.
So, you know, we talked about determining value, and Sonia, you already alluded to it. You look at maybe some of the ways, or the number of deals you might save and what's a deal worth. There's lots of ways to determine value, but before you get there, you got to ask yourself some specific questions, and that's what this slide's talking about. The current state of your business. Literally, this morning I was on site with a customer, and we had on a big whiteboard, what's the current state of the business? So knowing where your business is right now is one of the most important things you can do if you're going to try to figure out a way to establish value of your CRM. Your budget. You know, value is usually about the money that you're spending on a product and your return on that monetary investment. Well, if you don't know what your budget is, you're not going to be able to look at what your value could be. Now, a lot of customers say, you know, it's not a budgeted expense. I know I need it, but it's not budget. Okay. But it's still a good idea to have some idea of what your budget might be. Are you looking to spend $10,000 or $100,000 or $1 million? You know? But maybe money doesn't matter to you. The other thing that's going to be really important is what you want to get with this new CRM system. It's obvious. It says there the objectives. You know, and people say things like, well, you know, I want to have a centralized database. Okay. Well, what do you mean by that and why? So a centralized database is something, you're right, Sonia, I hear that a lot, but why? Why do you need a centralized database? For example, you could say, well, I want my remote users to be able to log in and see the same things we see back here in the office. Okay, that's one more step to figuring out what the value is of this system. So you want to have a centralized database because the remote users can have access, and that's going to give me value. How? Well, they're going to be able to give a better customer support session. They're going to be able to understand an opportunity before they walk in. So knowing what you expect to achieve and why is really important.
Well, and digging in just a little bit further into that, Kev, then you could really easily start getting those ROI numbers. So anyone who's trying to establish the value of CRM at their business and really sell it internally, you need to be able to dig a little bit further and just ask all those open-ended questions. Well, why is it important for those virtual people to have access to the same information? Well, there was an incident last month where George, you know, really upset a customer and they left us. Oh my gosh, how big was that account? Well, you know, they spend about $100,000 a year with us.
Right.
Well, so would having a centralized database and having George see that information maybe have helped save that deal? There you go. Maybe that's part of your ROI metric.
Your integrations are going to be crucial too, and that speaks to the objectives, right? Because if part of what your end users need is information about previous sales, well, then you might want to integrate with your ERP and accounting system, right? So the integrations are going to be another way that you can look at where you're going to get value from this system. Relationships, workflow management is a little fuzzier, a little bit, but it's really important. We spent, again, this morning, I was with a customer, we spent a lot of time talking about the relationships of their accounts. How are their accounts related to each other? How do they define what an account is? What's that internal relationship? And then the workflow about how you process a new account. So your CRM system is going to be able to keep track of all those relationships, and it's going to be able to process workflows. So if you have an idea of what you need it to do, and it kind of goes back to your objectives, you're going to have a better idea of what you need out of a CRM, and therefore you're going to be able to say, okay, if we can automate this process, you mentioned this earlier, Sonia, if we can automate this process, then we're going to save time. And that's another way you establish value.
Yep.
By saving time. Reporting capabilities, everybody wants great reporting. One of the things that's critical when you're trying to figure out what CRM system is best is to figure out how you want to report. A lot of times customers say, well, I need this, this, and this on a report. And the things that you see on that report dictate what you put into the CRM. And so some CRMs may not be able to handle the things you need on a report, which means, I need a third-party reporting tool. Suddenly my system got a little more expensive. Or maybe that third-party reporting tool is going to make my system better because it's going to allow me to mash up multiple things, which will allow me to hit these other points in my value matrix. Lots of things to consider here. I'll move fast. I don't want to take too much time here. I know I'm spending a lot of time on this. But your deployment, that's pretty straightforward. Do you want to deploy in the cloud, or do you want to deploy under the desk here? Which is your deployment model? That's important because that speaks to cost, maybe, and your overhead. There may be some specific requirements, if you've got Sarbanes-Oxley or HIPAA or EPCI, you can have some compliance requirements. And that goes back to your current state. Is my current
state? That will influence the cost, right?
Yeah, exactly. Does my current state require that I collect personally identifiable information? If so, I may have some compliance requirements. That means I got to get a host.
Yep.
Ease of use. This is going to help you discuss how your users use it. What do they do? If they're, I've heard your example, Sonia, and it kind of makes me cringe a little bit too. Somebody's only in their system once a month because that's what their boss told them to do. Mm-hmm. And he probably said that because it's just too hard to use, and don't waste your time in there because your system's not easy to use. If it's easy to use, you can go in every day. You're always in it.
And why is it not easy to use? Because probably no one spoke with that manager or salesperson. Right. Or any of those groups. So that's another huge thing, and we'll get into this more, but you need to give your actual end users a stake in this. They need to be able to have a say in what they're going to use, or else you're going to have my friend at the cocktail party who thinks it's a nuisance because no one ever asked him what he needs. It's crazy.
Totally right. Totally right. Yep. The final 3 points, your flexibility, your agility, scale. Flexibility is and all these CRM tools are going to be very flexible, but you got to understand what your flexibility is. What if my business process changed? That workflow we talked about earlier, what if next year that workflow is a little bit different? Well, if you've got flexibility in your tool, you're not spending the money to redevelop. You can reconfigure instead. Agility to scale is the same sort of thing. Is this tool going to be able to accommodate a tenfold scale? And I know, Sonia, you started asking this question, and I started copying you. What are your growth plans, right? Do you have growth plans coming up? And that's going to speak to the scale. Upgrades, enhancements, upgrades you expect in the tool. Are they included? Are they external? Are you going to get third-party enhancements that you might need? These are things that are going to speak to the value proposition. You got to understand what they are before you can determine a value. And then finally, social networking. Does your current state of the business require social networking? If so, you got to get a tool or a platform or a system that's going to accommodate your social networking needs. So you can see there's a lot of stuff that you may not have thought about when you're planning a CRM system.
Yeah.
So,
and this is a really good foray into, all right, now you all signed up for this webinar to look at, what is the better value? We have to start with how do you establish value? What does that mean? What is the value? So, okay, good. We just went through that. Perfect. These are some ways to tease out value. Now what? Here are two pretty big industry leaders.
It's important to note
and
that
we're going to take a look at some of the...
I'm sorry, go ahead. Not everybody's going to look at every point on that. But I think if our friends on the webinar here say take 5 of those points, they'll be a huge step closer to establishing value. But you're right, Sugar and Salesforce, that's the question. Which one's the better product? Which one's the better value?
So we've done a little feature set here. These are just a few points. I mean, there's so much to consider, and we have some bigger assets that go through some of the checklist items. I never like to start with that because the story needs to start with what do you need out of it. So just think of the first 15 minutes of this webinar as that's really what you need to start with. Start with the why. Okay, we've got the why, we've got what we need down, we've got why, what we're trying to solve. Now let's look at tools, and here are some of the biggest features. So on the Salesforce side, and then Kev will speak a little more to the Sugar side, customer support is huge. So you need to really look at that when you're looking at the software, packages and plans and costing. Talk and ask about ongoing support. Salesforce does come with full case portal support, so you can just log in and put a case in. It does take a couple days to get a response unless you're on a Premier support plan, which you're going to pay for, or you're going to be on an Ultimate Edition. It will take about 2 days to get a response back from their case portal. What about Sugar, Kev?
Okay. Sugar has unlimited support, but it's through a portal. So it's just like similar to Salesforce. You go and you type in your support request. You've got an SLA that governs whether it's phone or in the portal. You got an SLA that says they're going to respond in a certain amount of time, depending on the kind of support request it is. If your system's down, they're getting on it right away. But if it's a general question about how do I do something, maybe not as fast. You got phone support with the Enterprise Edition. It's a little bit like Salesforce. You got to Salesforce makes you pay extra for it explicitly, but Sugar gives it to you in their Enterprise Edition, which, by the way, is the more common edition these days.
Yep. And what's the response time like? I know the SLAs, but most companies don't go by just the SLA. So what is the normal response time?
There are contractual SLAs that everybody's bound by, but the reality is, if you call up with Sugar, and I mean, I've had customers do this recently. You call up, you got a question, they're going to try to answer it right on the phone. So the SLA may be 8 hours or 12 hours. But that doesn't mean it couldn't be 1 minute. You could get an answer right on the phone right then.
Good. Good. And ask, too, where the support teams are. So I know Salesforce does have some U.S. support teams, but most likely you're going to get someone that's abroad. Sugars are all U.S., right? Or, at least if you're a U.S. customer.
Yeah, it depends on the data center you're in. If you're a U.S. customer, you've got U.S.-based support. If you're in Asia, you have Asia-based support.
Yep. Okay, great.
Yeah, their other epicenter is the EU. So you got EU, Asia, and U.S.
Great. Okay. Deployment style. So Salesforce is just offered as a cloud product. So just like you'd log into Facebook, you'd log into Salesforce that way. And it's a private cloud for extra money, which means that they can put you in a different hosting situation away from all of the other logins that are going all into one portal. And that would be, if your HIPAA need to do some HIPAA compliance or something like that. And that's a multi-tenant database, right, Kev?
Yeah, despite your introduction saying a little more technical, yeah, it is multi-tenant. I think with private, you can get a single tenant, and that's part of the idea.
Right. But like 99% of Salesforce customers are all on one login, and that's multi-tenant. So that means it's like the Facebook style thing where you go in and you get your own area. It's not to say that like anyone's sharing data. It's very secure. It's just a different architecture.
And it is, you got to think about multi-tenancy, not just in the database, but in the server, the web server. So you got multi-tenant in the web server, multi-tenant in the database. That's why Sugar is. Sugar is split up, and that's why I don't know about Salesforce. Sugar is multi-tenant in the web server, but it's single tenant. Everybody's single tenant in the database. So your database is your own database.
And that means that you go to like your company name .sugar on demand. So you don't go into one like Salesforce.com. Kind
of that way, yeah. You're going to your company name .sugar on demand. Exactly right. And that's if you're in their on-demand cloud. You can also put it in a private cloud or on premises. So I could take, and this is a big difference. So this may be important for people to consider when they're determining value. If I need, for whatever reason, whether it's compliance or customization or access or something like that, I want to put my CRM on premises, I can with Sugar. You're not going to be able to do that with Salesforce. You can still have a private cloud, but it's hosted by Salesforce. And Sugar, and that's you can keep it in your building.
Yeah, and that's great. I've got some defense contractor clients who keep Sugar on a box in their building.
Right,
because they have to be DoD, like there's some big certifications. So
that's one of the best ways to maintain compliance is by not allowing any outside access.
Right. Yep. Always hard. Limitations, there are going to be limitations on everything. Right. I will say, and we're a Salesforce shop too. We work and develop on both platforms, which is really unique. So we know them both really well. The limitations, there is a limitations guide for Salesforce. The last I checked, I think it was 80 pages, but these are just not limits like it doesn't do this. It's more like if you do this, we're going to charge you. So, or maybe it's 56 pages, but it's just Google Salesforce limitations, and it's a big PDF, and they release one usually every rev, so every like season or quarter, they'll release one, 1 or 2 a year, and it will go through the API limitations. So that's the biggest thing. Data storage and API limits are really big, and so let's dumb those down a little. So data storage isn't always just, and I don't think Salesforce accumulates data this way, maybe a little bit. Really doesn't matter the number of contacts and leads and accounts you have in there. That's not going to eat up your storage.
It's all just attached files.
Right. It's attached files. It's documents in the documents repository. It's PowerPoints that are attached to emails that you archive. Like that's the biggest.
Right.
So you're going to have data.
Sugar.
Okay. And so that's all laid out in the limitations guide and then on the versioning and API limits. So Kev, maybe you can dig us a little bit deeper into API, but I always say, just think of it as like the tentacles that connect two systems. So if it's a modern day interface system, it will have a documented API, hopefully.
Yeah.
So let's say, you want to connect to Intact. Intact accounting system, of course, has a fully documented API. It's another cloud product. So we can use those API connectors and we can put them together to exchange data in an integration. And every time Salesforce sends data to Intact and Intact sends Salesforce data to Salesforce, you can check that off as one. So
one API call.
One API call. And I think, again, it's in the limitations guide. I believe it's like 10,000 a day. But that gets eaten up because every time you send a new customer back and forth, click, count that towards 10,000.
One transaction could be multiple calls.
Right.
Too. So if you just want to sync up one customer, that's not just one call, one transaction. That could be 100 calls.
Right. And I don't mean to freak anyone out, but like I've got some clients that have 2, 3, 4 integrations with different systems. Like you guys you got to talk to your Salesforce account manager because we're going to exceed this.
It's a very real consideration when you're trying to figure out value.
Big bucks. Right. Yeah. So it's hard to see into the future, but if you know that you will be wanting to integrate your ERP system or some other system down the line, throw that out there as a consideration because you may be having to pay a lot more for data storage or for API calls than you knew.
Yeah, data storage is a question that I get fairly frequently. People who are trying to be very precise in their buy want to know what the costs are going to be if they hit an overrun. And both Salesforce and Sugar list those costs on their website. It's not hard to figure out. But most of the time, it's going to be rare for somebody to actually hit that limit, I think. I've had a couple of customers have one that actually was storing recordings of every customer support call they made inside their CRM. So that,
Ooh,
like you said,
too much data.
Too much data, but that's the way they had to do it. They were a government contractor, a DoD contractor, so they had to keep everything boxed in. Nevertheless, you're absolutely right. The number of contacts, the information you're storing about the contacts, that doesn't count as your data storage. It's the attached files, like audio recordings or PDFs. Sugar doesn't have the API limitations. They still have an open API. You can use it, but there aren't limits on the number of calls, and that could be a big deciding factor between the two products.
Yep.
So
yep.
Just something to think about.
Yeah, no, it absolutely could. And the architecture, I think, matters less and less recently, especially. Apex is the language that's very similar to Java, right, Kev?
That's right. Apex is I don't want to say a variation of Java, but it is like Java. Yes.
Right. So it's a proprietary code base that you need to pay someone like us to code on. Now, not much coding usually needs to be done. It's all, both of these systems are point and click configurable. So you can get right in the background and you can add fields and all of that without coding. But this is if you want to create an integration, or if you want to make some special coding that does special fun things, then you're going to have to know that coding language. It's harder to find people, more expensive to find people to do that work.
That's right. That's right. And that may be a benefit too. I mean, because again, the consideration, maybe you've already got a staff that knows a certain language. You just want to know that ahead of time going in.
And you won't know unless you interview your staff.
That's right. See, it all works together. I love it. I love it.
Ask your staff.
What about user minimums?
Well, what about Sugar and the code base?
Sugar and the code. Oh, PHP. Yeah, I glanced right.
Don't they teach that in college?
Well, some do. It's they teach Java in college, and you can adapt it to Java programmer. So, I'm a little these days I'm a little more neutral on this. I used to be a big advocate of PHP, but I'm a little more neutral on this. I think it's more important just to know about your development capabilities. If you don't have any development capabilities, then I would be leaning a little bit towards the PHP if you wanted to build those in-house. Maybe easier to build that up yourself. But if you're already starting with, you've got developers who know Java and C++, then it's probably equal. I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but I'm not going to weight one tool over the other. But if you're starting from scratch, it's probably going to be easier to build up a PHP capability than it is an Apex capability.
Okay.
Because PHP, even though Apex is based on Java, you got to learn that specialty code. Whereas PHP is PHP. It's an open language. Everybody knows it. I know it. Everybody knows PHP.
Okay. Good. So user minimums. There's
user minimums.
Yeah. There's none with Salesforce. You can get one user of enterprise or one user of professional. Would be kind of unusual, but there are definitely people out there that have that. And they also have a new contact edition, which doesn't have a lot of the customization capabilities and like full-fledged forecasting that the Pro and Enterprise versions do. So almost everyone we talk to are in the Pro and Enterprise versions. We'll get into software pricing in a little bit here.
Yeah. Sugar does have a 10 user minimum, and Sugar is a pretty, it's going to have a lower cost per license. There may be some rare scenarios where it's not the lowest cost. Well, in most cases it is. It is going to be the lower cost, even with that 10 user minimum. But you always have to consider that. That's just another consideration.
Yep, no, absolutely. And email integration. So again, this goes back to what do your users want? Your sales users, man, if you show them that you can archive an email and go right to that client in the CRM 6 months, a year later and see the same email, that's amazing. Like that's just what we want. We're busy. Like that's amazing functionality right there, and it's basic. They both these systems do that. So Gmail and Outlook, both out of the box integrations with Salesforce. They don't charge you any extra unless you want the super duper Gmail one. They charge a little extra for that. Things like $5 extra.
Super duper Gmail. Oh,
yeah. There's a name, but there is a version that's more expensive than the out of the box one. But they both offer it.
Speaking of Outlook integration,
we do have a couple, sorry to interrupt, guys. We have a couple of questions that are related specifically to this slide, so I just want to jump in with them. One is, speaking to APIs, is there a generic API to hook into homegrown ERP systems? Do you know?
is there a generic API? Well, Sugar's API is specific to Sugar. So you got to ask the question about whatever ERP tool you're connecting to. Does it have an API? There is no generic API. Each tool is going to have their own specific application programming interface. Now, there may be generic tools like, I'm going to throw out more acronyms, ETL, or an integration tool that can talk to multiple ERP systems and multiple CRMs. So that kind of becomes a generic middleware, but there's no such thing as a generic API. No.
Okay, and then the other question that, and forgive me if I do not say the acronyms appropriately, but it's, so I know Gmail and Outlook integration will either work with IMAP systems, any IMAP systems, or Mapai systems.
Mappy.
Yeah, great.
Mappy.
Mappy.
Okay.
Yeah. Great. That's great. So the Salesforce one is agnostic of the hosting method of Outlook in this case. It's a client application, meaning you download it locally on your machine and it attaches to your Outlook client. So this is, there's also functionality within the 365 platform with Salesforce, but we're talking about the on-prem one right here. It doesn't matter if it's IMAP or Mappy or 365, it's still going to work just on the client, so it's okay.
Or even POP 3.
Oh gosh, what about on the Sugar side? Same thing, right?
Yeah, same thing. Yeah, because it's all installed. The answer is yes. I'll just keep it short. Yes, what you said is the same for Sugar. Yes.
And this is so this is Sarah. Thanks for putting this in because this is a good view. You'll get these slides, so you'll be able to blow them up too. But they're just screenshots of what the Outlook integrations look like. They're really nice. They both companies do a nice job with this integration.
Yeah, you can see they're very similar because they both put a panel on the right-hand side. The interfaces aren't identical. The interfaces aren't identical, but they are pretty similar and very functional. And by the way, I want everybody to know that they also sync your calendars too. It's not just the emails; it's also at the calendar level.
Yep, they're great, and they're not, again, no extra fee there. So then the mobile looks pretty similar.
Yeah.
Really nice mobiles for both of these. Salesforce is the Salesforce one. It's pretty customizable too, and it looks nice.
And Sugar just, well, I shouldn't say just as last year, or maybe even longer ago, but they've got an SDK for developing the mobile tool. So if you want to tweak your mobile, you can. That's another big win. It's like Salesforce Mobile 1, but Sugar's got the SDK that attaches into the development kit. Another thing, I want to get back to what you think about as you're establishing your needs. Mobile may be a need, but how is that mobile being used? Is that mobile being used on a phone, or is your mobile device a tablet? And I think that's a key factor here, because that might affect how people use it, which might affect your needs inside the CRM, which might affect your development and configuration costs. You want to make sure you put aside some funds for configuration, maybe just something to think about.
Yep. But the neat thing since the SDK came out and Salesforce One, you can really change the coloring, change the UI a little bit. Like you have much more control over changing the guts of how it feels and looks and operates than you did just a few years ago with both of these systems. So
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you can get pretty specific.
I've found on more than one occasion, CRM is good, but the real win comes in that mobile sales force, your sales staff in the field being able to be mobile. So this is a big consideration here. How are they going to use mobile, and is it going to meet the needs of the people in the field? That may be where you see the ROI, and therefore where you establish value.
Great. So yeah, the customer journey. This is a big hot topic lately. Is customer journey, view of the customer. And Salesforce has a very large ecosystem, so there are third-party partners out there that do a better job than Salesforce would just with this out-of-the-box functionality. But what you're seeing on your screen is an absurdly long, but a good example of a customer journey, or really the status bar is kind of what we call it, the progress bar of a Salesforce. In this case, it's an opportunity, but this can extend across really any object in the system. So a lead, a case, an account, a contact, whatever, opportunity, of course, and it steps you through. So each green area there, that inch-long area, is a step that the rep had to take. And when you say, yes, I completed this, then it might, pop out some more fields, or it might prompt you to do something, but it really just steps you through that process, and it shows you that in that kind of, visual way. But that's about where it ends. Again, there are third-party tools that go deeper, but this is out of the box progress bar stuff.
Yeah. Sugar has a very similar sort of out-of-the-box tool. It is an add-on that Sugar developed, or Sugar bundles in. That's called the customer journey. And I'm a little biased. I really like this customer journey better than competing customer journeys, I'll put it that way, because you can see, I wish I had a pointer here and I could use my laser pointer. But you can see there's columns there. The first column is all green. That means all those tasks in that phase of the customer journey have been accomplished. The second one has a blue bar at the top, then a green bar, then they're all gray. So the blue bar indicates that phase of the customer journey, that segment, hasn't been entirely completed yet. The green one has, that's all done, but then the others, they're left to be done. But what I really like about this is that those boxes, the gray boxes, the green boxes, those correspond to activities that are also related to this record. So we're on an account record here inside Sugar. Those may be related to calls that are associated with the account. And you can tie that into workflow. So you can say, if somebody makes a call to this account, that's going to check off one of the stages in the customer journey automatically. So you can automatically advance. You can do it manually, of course, too. You can automatically advance the customer journey. And then you can see, next slide, please, not just where any one customer is, but where all these customers are. And this is that one of those hidden gems inside Sugar that I think is really cool. Some customers look at this like, wow, I can see at a glance where all my leads are, opportunities are, or accounts are, or whatever this is showing you. At a glance, you can see if anything is way ahead or anything's lagging behind. I had one customer who's very interested in this because they wanted to see at a glance where all the problems were. And the problems were when a customer journey hadn't been advanced sufficiently. So it's a big deal. I think,
too.
Yeah, that's right.
It shows you how fast something's being done and if they're laggards. So you might have some reps who are excelling at this and doing things faster than others who might be getting stuck at a certain point. You say, what about that point there is holding this deal up or this stage up? What is that? So yeah, this is a whole different way of thinking of CRM, because normally, Kev, what would we do before? We'd have to pull reports.
Yeah, you make a spreadsheet.
Right?
Maybe, yeah. So I love this screen. I love the screen. I like to, if my customer needs to keep track of a customer journey at all, I want to make sure they know about these screens.
Yeah, and we've had some examples. We've done so of course this sales process, like that's obvious, right? Mm-hmm. This is what you do to qualify a lead. Okay, easy. Well, we also have one that that's a client that is a home builder, and here are the steps. Here's the 30-step plan for signing a new homeowner on, and here's all of the customer success and marketing and great welcome packaging and materials that we send the customer throughout the build of their home. Mm-hmm. So you can see, right, Sarah, just go back one slide, like the really interesting that we might have the first quadrant might be, figuring out what the contract is and signing it. The second quadrant might be breaking ground and sending them a welcome packet and a t-shirt and a lawn chair and, fun things to get them excited about their house. Well, then we're checking in more with them, and then we're doing not just groundbreaking, then we're doing the welcome party, and then we're doing a check-in. So you kind of see how that controls a very large business. It gives people the same message now. So you're talking as a company with a vision.
Yeah, that speaks unified customer experience. Love that. Right. You gotta love that.
That's right. So the good stuff is pricing.
Pricing.
This is pretty straightforward. Kev, walk us through the Sugar pricing.
Sugar pricing is pretty straightforward. You've got professional and enterprise, and it's $40 per user per month or $65 per user per month. There also is an ultimate version of Sugar. There's a version that we're not including here, but most people are going to be on professional and enterprise, and as far as I know, all of my customers, seems like everybody's on enterprise these days for various reasons.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's almost a similar sort of thing for Salesforce, right, Sonia?
Yeah, it is. So they're even named the same.
Yeah.
And there are other versions, that we're not showing here, but these are the most popular ones that almost every business would go for. So this is why we show this. The professional 75 and enterprise at 150 a user a month. And then we put that annualized price down below. Both of these vendors are most likely not going to do month to month ever. So you probably need an annualized commitment, most likely with an annualized payment up front. So when you think of the cost of software, take the bottom bin there and multiply that number 480 or 900 times your user base a year, and that's what your upfront expenditure is. And you're annualized, of course, so that's every year repeating for both of these products. They're both SaaS. And so annualized.
With pricing, it's important to note that these vendors do not offer monthly pricing. They put it on the website that it's monthly.
Annualized.
They have an annual contract. We at BrainSell have worked out financing deals so you can pay monthly even though you have an annual contract. So that is an option to pay monthly, but with an annual contract.
Yep. And everyone always asks us, well, what is it? What are professional services? And it's that difficult question of we just don't know until we talk to you more. But we've done a lot of helping our clients, even with just consulting engagements, if it's a large enough company and it's worth their while, to do a vendor selection engagement for them, where we just say, stop, let's look first at what you all need, and we will facilitate that. And so we'll write it down. And we've spent weeks and weeks doing this with clients, and then we get down to a top 3 maybe of vendors, and we help rate them through the demos, score them. We come up with score sheets and say, okay, what feature is important to you? And then looking at the services, they can be pretty similar. The effort to stand both of these products up with the appropriate training and change management and process build-outs and data migration and integration is pretty darn similar. So, I'm sorry, the hard, tough answers, it's always, we just need to know more to come up with a service estimate. But they're pretty similar in the efforts that they take.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. There are some rules of thumb, but in general, the implementation is going to be very similar, almost identical.
Yep, absolutely.
So then the big question.
Yeah. Which one?
Okay,
there's no easy answer.
I want to segue from what you were just saying, what we were both just saying about implementation. And I'm going to quote, Sonia, we were just talking about this moments ago. It isn't about the plan, it isn't about the brand, it's about the plan. I hope I said that right. It's not about the brand, it's about the plan.
Yeah.
So which is a better value? Well, like you said before, you got to interview your stakeholders. You got to have a plan, right?
Yep. Yeah, you have to. And that's the only way that you're going to get adoption as well, is if you let people own it. And get excited about it, and not just put them on that, on that you have to log in. This is what you're doing. No, have them own a piece of it. And what you don't want to do though is you don't want to be software poor, house poor.
That's right.
That's what I call it. You don't want to let those users in the interview process say the only thing I'll use is X because that's what I'm used to, and I don't care how much it costs. And well, they're not writing the check probably. And also, you don't want to be software poor, which you buy something because your users force you to, or they tell you to, and that's all they're going to use, or you've got the shiny object in front of you and you're just going to go with it because you think it's a safe choice. And then you don't have any money to get it stood up and get people trained and get it adopted. You don't want to be software poor. So just make sure that you've got the appropriate services in there, that you don't skimp on training. Too often we see someone that wanted to spring for some shiny add-on or something that you're like, you really didn't need that, and now you're cutting back on user training. Like that doesn't make any sense. You need to train people to use what you've already purchased. So don't be software poor. Another fact that is just insane, because I just love looking at big businesses and what they spend, and all of that is public with these publicly traded companies. So here's an example when we're on the software poor, and I'll make this really quick. In 2017, Salesforce spent 46% of their entire revenue on sales and marketing. And they spent 15% on R&D in 2017. Apple spent 6% of their revenue on marketing.
Wow.
Salesforce spent 46%. Now, that's not apples to apples.
Oh, I see what you did there.
It's not apples to Salesforce. Apple is gigantic. It's a larger number. I get it. But they put so much more into R&D than someone like Salesforce would. And I mean, it's a huge number, 46% that they're putting into sales and marketing.
So I think what your point is that 46% increases the brand awareness, right?
Right.
And so I think what you're saying is you don't let the brand dictate the value.
Exactly. You've got to establish your own value.
There may be reasons to buy a big platform like Sugar or like Salesforce. It may be appropriate in some cases, but the CEO of this company, Jim, says just ignore the logos. Forget about the logos and make a right decision based on these key points, the value that you've established. Those bullet points we talked about at the beginning of this webinar. Make sure you understand your business. Make sure you figure out where the costs are going to be won back. So Sonia, the example you were saying about, am I going to save one deal or two deals or three deals if I have a good tool? Forget about the brand. Forget about the logo. Am I going to win back 3 deals or get 3 deals I wouldn't have gotten before? If the average value of a deal is $10,000, then that's $30,000 I just won back. And that's going to help you to establish the value of your CRM system. So you interview your key stakeholders, you use that tool to prioritize the key areas of value, like winning a deal. You can do some simple math, and you'll figure out where which is the better value. Then look at cost of the product. I got another example, if I may. Sarah, do we have enough time? Looks like we might. Had one of my customers, this is a couple of years ago, they just looked at the amount of time they were cutting and pasting between disparate systems. And they said, okay, we've got, I don't know, a couple hundred people cutting and pasting. They're spending maybe 15 minutes a week cutting and pasting, and that was a low number. And they added it all up by the average cost of labor in their company, and their number, I didn't figure this out, they figured this out, that a new CRM system was going to save them $200,000 in wasted time.
Of cut and paste?
Of cutting and pasting. Now, that's not a tangible thing like I'm going to get 2 more deals, but that's a very real number. Wasted time costs money, right?
Yeah, and not to mention the distraction of
errors,
forgetting and losing track and errors. Right. Yeah, it's just crazy. So we also have another saying that's called press the pause button. Mm-hmm. And when I get someone, calling in and talking to them, and I just want quotes for a couple of systems, like, wait, you got to press the pause button, understand what are you doing, what you establish your value, why are you doing this, step away and just say, why am I doing this? What is it going to accomplish? What problems is it going to solve? Do I have the people in place? Will people actually use this stuff? What do they like to use? What does it look like? Come up with that score sheet, or we can help, and make sure that your users have a stake. So that's gets those first couple points there. Obviously, calculate the number of users in the budget. All these systems are pretty easy to find pricing online for, and then establish that budget maybe with the value in mind, or you've got to do both exercises, of course. So establishing the value and then understanding, okay, I think we can probably win back, $500,000 of business with this. What's practical to spend, and then coming to that budget, you can really understand the ROI pretty quickly, and having the right deployment partner. So don't be software poor. You need to be able to have a company that first of all, don't try to do it yourself. So you have your job to do. So that's why companies like us exist, and others that know what they're doing and know the ins and outs of these systems, and ask the right questions. If you're getting a quote from a partner that's like, oh yeah, I asked you 4 questions and now I've got this big proposal for, $80,000 on the line, they didn't do their homework right, and they're probably going to go over budget or not deliver.
It's probably a cut and paste proposal.
Yeah, it is. And it's not going to deliver the value that you need to appreciate all the money that you just spent on software. So make sure that you have the right partner who asks the right questions.
I know you do this. I do this all the time. Let's make sure that you're going to win money. You're going to have a positive ROI before we start doing this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, questions.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just sorry to push you along, but we only have a few minutes left, and we have had some questions come in. And folks, if you have questions, enter them in the question box. If we don't get to them, we will follow up with you via phone and email and make sure that all of your questions are answered.
And Sarah, maybe advance the slide, because I know some people might drop off, and we just want to be able to show you that we've got that the CRM assessment as well. So go ahead and shoot on those questions, and people can email or contact us for this as well.
Great. So the first question is, what is the biggest difference between professional and enterprise on both platforms? So I don't know.
Yeah.
You go
answer quickly.
Yep. No, it is. The biggest one is that you're going to be able to do Apex coding in Salesforce. And
enterprise.
Then there's some, in enterprise. So there are clients that we work with who are like, oh, we can only do that with coding and you need to upgrade. So there's no way around that. And there are a lot of other things too, like an enhanced workflow builder, and it's all on the feature set, all within Salesforce.
Similar thing with Sugar. There are not as many differences, but there are a few important ones. Advanced workflows or business process in Sugar Enterprise. You don't get that in Sugar Professional. There are a bunch of other features. Again, there's a comparison doc on the website, or contact us. We'll be able to.
Sandboxes. No, that's a big one.
Yeah.
So
support, phone support.
With Sugar, so I don't want to degrade that, guys. I just had a client that's going live, and they had to hear the bad news from the Salesforce account manager that they need to pony up, like, I think it's 10% of their annualized Salesforce contract. So let's say it's $30,000, annually for the Salesforce software. They needed to pay $3,000 or whatever for a sandbox. And that's just an instance for your people to play to not mess up the live production data. And with Sugar Enterprise, you get 2 free sandboxes.
That's a great point. Great point.
That actually adds up a lot. And then phone support you get with Sugar.
Right.
Enterprise.
Sugar Enterprise. That's right.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of other smaller feature differences, but I think you hit on the sandbox is huge in phone support and business process advanced workflow.
Yep. Yeah, and you don't get a sandbox with Salesforce Professional or Enterprise. You need to add that on separately. What else, Sarah?
Okay, I think we can do one more. Regarding customizations, is one platform easier than the other if I have a lot of custom work?
So there's always customizations that are point and click, and then there's coding. And the coding, I would defer to Kevin for that. But for customizations, the studio sections out back, I kind of prefer Sugar's. They're both pretty straightforward, but Sugar's the UI looks a little better. But Salesforce, you can do certain things like you can import fields, so you don't have to make each one.
Yeah.
It's a little more tedious with Sugar Studio, but the customizations they're pretty on par. They're not that different of an effort.
Yeah.
Kevin, what do you think?
Both these tools let you use. They have a way that you can configure the tool. You as the end user, and so you're right to distinguish between configuration and customization or custom code. And they're both pretty good. I do lean a little bit towards Sugar, though. I think Sugar is the easier tool for end users to configure. So the Sugar Studio is pretty great. For development, again, if you've already got development capabilities in-house, they're going to be equal. If you've got the development capability for Java or PHP, then you've got the capability to write code. I do say that my engineers like both APIs. I've heard engineers, it gets split. So some engineers say, oh, the Sugar API is better. Other engineers say the Salesforce API is better. So the actual API itself, I don't think is a distinguishing factor. I think it's up to your development capabilities. If you're going to write code, if you're just looking for point and click configuration, I'd lean towards Sugar.
Yeah, and you might. So Sarah, go ahead.
Nope. There's. I think we can wrap up. I just wanted to see if you had any final thoughts. We're at the top of the hour.
I had one tiny one.
Okay.
So again, big fan of Salesforce, but you're going to look on their site and see that they have Marketing Cloud, they have Service Cloud, they've got their e-commerce offering. It seems like they have a solution for everything, and they kind of, they definitely appear that way. That doesn't mean that everything is baked into one price. So of course, logically, you're going to have to pay more for Service Cloud. You're going to have to pay for more for Marketing Cloud. So again, the marketing is there 100%. Like, they do a really great job at, obviously, for all that money, you know, conveying the message, but those are just going to be add-on costs. So even though you think it's an all-in-one tool, all of those things cost more money, and they could just be an acquired product, like Marketing Cloud was just an acquisition. So you just have to look at, you really have to step back and look at what are we going to need now, what are we going to need in 3-5 years, and then back into it, establish the value. And there's going to be a right answer for every company. That's going to be different. Don't let the brand dictate the value. There's a takeaway. That's great. It's all about the plan.
Awesome. Thank you both. This was really great. And as we mentioned at the start of the webinar, we did record this. We'll be reaching out and sending follow-up emails and phone calls. So if you want to schedule a complimentary one-to-one CRM value assessment that's more customized and helping you to determine what your values are and the areas of value when selecting a CRM, we're more than happy to help you with that. And that's it. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, Kevin.
Bye.
Bye, Sonia.
Bye.